Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
Just to remind everybody that language usage and content that we provide here may be disturbing, disgusting, probably will be and should be. Words like bloody custard and words that rhyme with that may be featured. Actually will be featured. In fact, perhaps will only be featured. Just warning you. Yes, this show is brought to you by Wow Tables.
You're listening to Cyrus Says.
It's called Cyrus Says, and it's a matter of honor, what I have to discuss right now, and very painful. Most of these rants are painful, not just for you, the listener, but also for me. And the fact is that people should stop presuming that you're somebody else. I am sick of being at an airport or outside a shopping mall trying to find parking for somebody else's wife. And I have to tell you that I find it appallingly, disgustingly, terribly bad Englishy, unnice of a person to come and call me Sajid Khan. I'm not Sajid Khan. We're two different people. Sajid is a filmmaker who makes funny movies that he likes to watch himself. I, on the other hand, I'm an out-of-work comedian, actor, poet, philosopher who nobody wants to talk to. So we're two totally different people. I am not Sajid. He is not me. Although we are friends and have held hands in the moonlight on occasion, Friday evening, 7 to 9 at Bandra Bandstand. But that's not your business of concern. The fact is, I'm not him and he's not me. So if you don't know who the person is, don't say hello to them. In fact, in India, I've been saying this from the beginning of time. Don't say hello anyway. We're just too many people. Stop talking. It's called Cyrus Says.
Cyrus Says, we have other shows too. You should check them out.
Hi, I'm Amit Gurbaksani.
I'm Purva Mehra.
And I'm Pranuti Datta. And we're from a city website called The Daily Pow. And we have a new podcast called The Powcast. So you can listen to us on the IndusVox SoundCloud page as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.
You're listening to Cyrus Says.
Okay, we're with Nilima Achwal, and she's the founder of a startup social venture called Iesha. It's all about spreading awareness on sexuality and bringing the genders together in our country and beyond. Interesting life from Michigan to South America to here. She tells us all. She spills the beans, and she tells you how you can immigrate in 15 minutes or less.
Cyrus Says, ad breaks are beneficial to your mental health.
This show is brought to you by Wow Tables. I spoke to Kunal and Deepa, the founders, about Wow Tables. Now tell us, what does it entail completely? How can we save money? We're Indians. We're not interested in anything else but how we can save money and enjoy a good meal.
So we've got curated dining experiences at some of the nicest restaurants in several cities in India now.
Okay.
And apart from the fact that we guide you into what to order and what to not, we also help you save at least 30 to 50% on that.
What are you saying? 30 to 50% on a meal?
That's right.
I'm in. Count me in. I eat a lot. You better be careful. Don't want to break the
And
bottle.
you get to have multiple courses.
Oh, so you can tell I eat a lot, huh? Deepa, that's very rude. It was not necessary. That was mean. Visit wowtables.com to book an experience and use the code Cyrus Says to get 500 rupees off on your first reservation. I repeat, 500 rupees off. That's 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus another 100. Yeah, that's right.
And that's what Cyrus says.
All right, Nilima Achwal. That's the name of the young lady who's walked into our studio, and thank God it's a young lady. We've had some very strange people on this program. I have to tell you, one man was 104 years old, Nilima. 104 years old when he left. He was about 25 when he came in. That's another story. But Nilima, let me talk about you in the beginning. You're the founder of a startup social venture called Iesha. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Iesha, and I quote, because I do my research, so I know this by heart, has a fun, interactive and easy to use digitized curriculum on sexuality and gender. You had me on sexuality. I told my producer, the moment you read that word, like a good Indian male, find out who they are. So, and I'm so sorry to bring it down to that, but that's where we are in our 40s as men from South Mumbai, struggling to come to terms with our own gender. Okay, but now, jokes apart, it's a very interesting thing because I think growing up, and I'm now 44 years old, we never had sex education in upmarket Mumbai schools I'm talking about. Forget elsewhere. So we had to learn from pornography, which our elder brothers and cousins gave us. You may not remember Mayfair and Whitechapel and Penthouse and Playboy and all these things were very important things for young men in the 70s and 80s. So I'm quite intrigued to understand a country like ours, 1 billion plus, seems to have this darkness about sexuality. Am I right? Now let me stop talking. Nilima, please tell me how you decided to get into this whole show the light.
Yeah. So why don't we back up a little bit and take a look at what...
May I just mention that Nilima has an American accent? If you do not understand a word she says, remember, we have no idea ourselves. Nilima, I'm
because
kidding.
I'm sure you've never heard an American accent before.
We can't afford that. You have to pay you by the dollar if we get you on. We normally get people with very hard vernacular accents. And then we can make fun of them. That's our whole show. What did you say, guys? Tell me again.
Oh, trust me, people make fun of me as well.
Yeah, what is that Simpson Apu character that's destroyed all Indian character, sense of being Indian? I don't know where that accent came from. Nilima, I'm interrupting you. So, it's a very serious subject in its way because we seem to have just avoided it.
Yeah, so if you look at gender inequality in India, you look at the sort of things that are happening, the statistics speak for themselves, like a woman is raped every 22 minutes and 53% of children face sexual abuse.
Is this all true? Because
absolutely.
It sounds a little unbelievable.
It sounds that way, and the reason is because we live in a culture of silence around these topics. We don't talk about it. But there have been lots and lots of studies that time and again that show that these figures are true. And, what happens is that when kids reach puberty, when there's silence, the kids try to get information from other sources. Like you were just talking about pornography. They get the wrong information from their peers. And basically, they get messages from Bollywood. As we know, they don't necessarily have the most consensual, empowering messages about how to interact with the opposite gender. And
Bollywood, the female character is always so strongly etched in the two dances around the 4 trees, now in foreign locales, of course.
Exactly. And so what's really happening is that we have a systemic issue of rape, of sexual abuse, of, even like menstrual myths and taboos that cause a lot of hardship and, breaking down of confidence of girls. All this kind of stuff is happening. And the sort of solutions that we're seeing are very symptomatic. We're seeing people calling for harsher penalties for rapists. There's a lot of punishment, that we're talking about how do we do better law enforcement. All of these things are good, but they're not going to solve the problem. Right?
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt, but also this objectification that seems to have happened from my generation onwards, because we have there's no real equal sort of understanding of sexuality. Is it only India or is this everywhere?
No, this is absolutely a problem in every single country around the world. But what's really interesting in India is that sexuality has been a complete taboo for thousands of years.
I didn't want to say it on the show.
Until now. And it's breaking now. So after the Delhi gang rape that, made the headlines, the silence was broken for the first time. And now people are talking about the crisis that India is facing in terms of sexuality and gender, and people are looking for a solution. But the solutions, again, that they're going after are very symptomatic. And nobody's saying, but why do we live in a culture that perpetuates violence? Why do we, where are the kids getting their messages from?
So why do we?
Because the kids are not getting any sort of formal education at the right age, right?
So why is there this embarrassment, this Victorian thing that we seem to still have? It is an embarrassment, right? Because nobody wants to talk about it. Parents don't talk about it. Teachers don't talk about it. Elders don't talk about it. And suddenly the kid is old enough and does ridiculous things like in extreme cases like the Delhi rape case.
And so it's interesting because... So in India, we act like sexuality doesn't exist, right? And it comes from a place of shame, and it comes up from a place of even parents and teachers and educators don't necessarily have the right information, and they're not used to talking about it. But what happens is when you go into a school and you talk about it in a really matter-of-fact, positive, empowering way, like, look, actually, all these changes are happening in your body so that you can become an adult, and that can be a beautiful thing. And when you come in with the right attitude, it doesn't have to be something that's awkward or weird.
There is a school of thought that thinks that the Indians, our sexuality tunnel that we have, or the fact that we stay away from any sort of talks on engaging on sexuality, conversations on sexuality, is to do with the fact that the Indian man is ashamed of his legs. And so because of that, he never goes to that area at all. I'm beginning to believe that's true. Because I change in dressing rooms across India and I find that it's true. Although the calves are genetic, the rest of the leg also is nothing appealing, I must tell you. I've run out of dressing rooms in all north, south, east and west, and there's a lack of body image.
So Cyrus, it has nothing to do with the fact that boys and girls are segregated in schools and everywhere and don't get a chance to interact with each other. It's all the legs, right?
I interrupted your flow with my stupidity. I shall now move to the side. No, so let's get back to the biggest issue here, which is, I think, is not a class issue. it's across pan-India, it's across classes and cultures and communities.
Absolutely.
Which is everybody, and may I just tell you a quick anecdote? I worked with a company called MTV, which used to show ads in between music, and they sent me to do an HIV/AIDS awareness workshop. And subsequently I met big names who were role models and players who were spreading AIDS, HIV awareness, such as Bill Clinton, who you might remember was the president of the United States and now may become the first lady in a year or so. So, and he was a very interesting man, because we had this whole third world sort of group at Barcelona, only African Asian countries together, and whoever he gave us 20 minutes, but I anchored it, he spoke to everybody, all right? If it was somebody from the Republic of Congo, he spoke to them, he spoke about their politics, he just did his homework really well. And when we spoke about India, he said, my biggest worry about India is that you're 1 billion people, but every time I try to talk to somebody about sex in India, politicians, bureaucrats, they all look the other way. So we're talking about statesmen, so-called statesmen in our country were awkward and unhappy to talk about sex.
Yeah.
When he came with a whole agenda on sexuality, sexual abuse, lack of sexual awareness and sexual taboos, etc., and nobody wanted to engage him. So his point was that you're 1 billion people, so somebody is having sex. And why did they avoid talking about it?
And Cyrus, it goes back to the joke that you made about feeling weird about your legs. If people can't feel comfortable about their own bodies and your sexuality is so core to who you are as a person, if you can't accept it and accept your body and accept who you are as a person, as an identity, as a whole person, then it's hard for you to engage with the topic. You have to have that self-love and self-awareness first before you can even engage with these issues. And it has far-reaching ramifications. I mean, HIV, AIDS, abortions, rape, so many things. But it all
just
comes
the way men think about women sometimes. It just seems to be disconnected. Not able to understand that they're people, because if you get into that whole pornographic space and don't limit yourself, it actually becomes like that. I'm not saying everybody, but there are people like that.
Oh, definitely.
So it's a little bit scary. But let me tell you, I'm an upper middle class boy from South Mumbai. I can't remember my parents ever discussing sex with me. And of course, I don't think they discuss sex amongst themselves now, but then they're in their 80s. This is another story. But so I think that, again, it's across the classes. People just turned away from it. So why is that? Is it just lack of self-esteem? Why is there shame and especially with our people, why is there this sort of question mark?
So I think that's a really interesting and difficult question. So it's something that exists.
For which you have to interview my parents.
So it exists all over the world, and I think that in Indian culture, there's this also exists in many cultures, but there's like the prototype of the good Indian household or the good Indian woman, right? Who's pure and chaste and
wears a white sari. You can get the whole image, yeah.
And I think in general, there's a sense of like honor and there's a sense of reserve around these topics, and broaching these topics is considered very vulgar and it's considered out of line. I think this has to go with the fact that our society in general has a lot of rigid structures and rules, right? And for many thousands of years, this worked really well in terms of keeping the class structure, keeping order in society, and it worked.
Know your place.
But even, beyond that, it worked well. There's a very solid family structure, and people knew how to function within it. And the information about sexuality that was passed down from generation to generation in a very specific way. Now with liberalization, with things like pornography, with Western media coming in, all of these, and, urbanization, these structures are getting broken. But the education is still not there. So people don't know where to find themselves.
But the cliche, the Kama Sutra, Ajanta Ellora, just look around. There's so much sexuality in India when you actually look around, going back thousands of years. And it's unabashed sexuality. It's there for everyone to see. Like, it's all hanging out. And people talk about, if you meet foreigners, you're interesting because you're an American Indian sort of person. Mm-hmm. So you've got both the cultures intertwined. Don't you think it's a bit odd? How do you explain the Kama Sutra? Because, way before the Westerner thought of putting sex down in a book and a manual, we had it in a very clinical, practical sort of approach to sex.
And that's why it's so interesting to work in India, because when you go back to the roots of our culture, it's very open and accommodating.
Yeah.
We don't have one
I want
scripture.
That back, Nilima. I want that back.
We don't have one scriptures. We have thousands of scriptures. We have thousands of ways to practice our lives, right?
Yeah.
And I think
we have 40,000 gods, but we have 64 sexual positions. I've only tried 3, and 2 with comatose people. I won't say which gender because sometimes we don't have a choice.
This isn't sounding very good, Cyrus.
No. Are we holding the torch for sexuality and sexual awareness or not? If we cross the line, please put me back in my place. No, but I find this really... Again, when working with Westerners on these subjects, they can't understand because you're such a rich tradition, such a rich culture, and a culture that taught the world so many things. When they are turning to the East to learn more, we are just running away and don't know.
And the coolest thing is when you go into a classroom and, we work with low-income girls and boys from the slums, rural areas. And not to say this is only a low-income issue, because it's an issue across class lines, as we were saying. The girls are like, our mothers tell us not to do anything while we're on our periods. Sit in the corner, don't talk to anyone, don't touch anything. You're kind of cursed and impure. Are the periods explained to them?
Yeah. Like what the ramifications are of that and blah, blah, blah. And
nothing is explained to them. They're just told, don't talk to boys, don't touch the food, don't cook, sit in the corner, don't play outside, because you'll poison it.
What rubbish, really?
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. Don't touch the baby.
As in the girl
don't touch
impure.
the baby because the baby will get sick.
Because the girl is impure.
Because the girl is impure. And what's interesting though is when we sit down and we tell them the root of these traditions, which is that in the olden days, women were given a few days of rest. Because when they secluded themselves and they allowed themselves to rest, it's a time of intuition and self-reflection, really, for the body and the mind.
The rest is because of the PMS, because of the menstruation.
Yeah, so the menstruation days are supposed to be days of rest and reflection.
What are you saying?
Yeah, because
I want those days. This is gender biased, man.
So it's supposed to be, right? And in those days, women were allowed to rest and they were treated like queens.
So when did it become impure for their touch to be around you during the time?
All of these traditions turned into restrictions with the advent of patriarchy. So things that were supposed to benefit women were turned into things that
So the root problem, Nilima, is not sexuality or a darkness in our country. It is the fact that we have to get rid of the men and let women lead. Is that what we're coming to?
Well, patriarchy hurts men as much as it hurts women because, they're not allowed to show their emotional sides. Men also get raped and that's often not recognized. There's lots of reasons why patriarchy also hurts men.
Daddy still gives you the pocket money till the day he's no longer there, and that's very painful. In a way, it's also a sort of molestation. But jokes apart, coming back to the whole subject, so it's very interesting. When you meet, now let's talk about what you're doing here for a second. I think we just run away from that. You left America, we'll go back into your whole background. You left America, you came here, and you decided that you need to help girls more. Is it more girls than boys, the NGO? Who are you talking to?
Yeah, so we're a for-profit startup, and we work with both boys and girls, and that's very important to us. Like, teaching consent to boys and teaching boys to be comfortable and aware about their own bodies is equally or more important as talking to the girls. Mm-hmm. And after our sessions, the boys will come up to us and they'll be like, Didi, thank you so much for coming. Like,
thank God they call you Didi. Those hormones are raging. Got to be very careful. Yeah.
No, they turn out to be very respectful young boys after our sessions.
Listen, Nilima, it's a very interesting topic. If I was like a 12-year-old, 9-year-old, or whatever, and you start discussing, firstly it kills maths and science and all those boring subjects, and then you talk about the human body and all that. I really think, if it's said in the right way, it probably will help at some level.
And boys come to us and they say, my favorite module was consent. And I'm like, why? And he's like, and this boy told me, he said, I used to think that it was right to force a girl to say yes. And on that day, it changed my mind and I realized that I shouldn't follow a girl or force her to say yes. If she says yes, fine. If she says no, from now on, I'll leave her and move on.
What age was this boy?
13 years old.
And he was having relations?
Low income, yeah. I mean, at that age, they have their little
fooling around sort of thing,
flirting and crushes.
And he was forcing himself on a girl up to that point.
No, he said that he thought that was the way to do it. He thought that was right.
Oh, okay, the caveman mentality until then. But
from what he learned just from Bollywood, from his friends, from what he saw around him, he thought he was supposed to emulate what he saw other boys in his community doing.
It's amazing because I thought Bollywood gives you a whole different look. I mean, if you look at the kind of color coordination in the clothes that the early Govinda has given us, for example, I thought, gender is just blurred after a point because, it's just a plethora of colors, a kaleidoscope, so to speak. But anyway, I guess everybody gets a different thing out. It's a Rashomonic. You get your own, spiel or your own spin out of watching it. We'll move away from that and we'll get back to what you're doing here. So you've got these, the age group is what? For 8 to 13, 14, is it?
6 to 8 standards. So that would be 11 to 13 years old.
11 to 13. Shouldn't we start talking to them a little earlier? I've noticed that, with the internet and everything else, kids seem to be aware of everything.
You can absolutely start talking to children as early as you want with different kinds of information. The curriculum that we've designed is for when they start to hit puberty. Because we feel like an intervention at that stage would be the most impactful and pivotal for them.
But for the females, it's pretty clear when they hit puberty from a physiological point of view. But for the males, from my own experience, again, as shallow as I am, I got my first pimple at 18, so I
so that might have been an anomaly.
You think? But I think people, in the males, it's all over the place. There's a guy who has a mustache who looks like somebody's uncle. In the same class as the kid who's, cherubic and, looks like 12 years old at 16.
And that's part of the thing, right? Is that you should respect that everyone grows at different rates and not tease each other. And that's one of the number one impacts that we see coming out of our sessions is that the kids say, we're not going to bully each other anymore because we realize that everyone is normal and every sort of change is normal. So why tease each other?
Would they talk to their parents after talking to you? Would they have the guts to now have a conversation, or is it still taboo?
It depends on the family. So one girl came to us and she said, I told my mom that we're having these sessions, and my mom said, good, I'm glad because I don't have education. So I hope you go to them and ask them your questions because I can't answer them myself. And then, of course, there's a lot of kids who don't tell their parents.
And but what do you think would be the reaction to parents knowing that this is happening? Because that's another problem, right? The parents are not happy with, the conservative sort of mindset that a lot of Indian families have.
So there's a huge misconception about what sex education is in this country. People... because it almost doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And they think it's something that's very vulgar and malicious, and that you're teaching children how to have sex, which is ridiculous.
And young boys will be like, it'll be full of pictures, let me sign up. But it's not exactly like that.
But actually, when they see what it's about, that it's about just helping children be more aware of the fact that they're going through a time of change and learning to just be aware of their own changes, being more respectful and mature about it, using the right vocabulary, then, the parents... They get on board once they realize that it's an innocuous thing.
But do you use the analogies that we are told, the cliche analogies
Absolutely
like birds
not.
and the bees?
Absolutely not. Because they're riddled with this creepiness and this shame and
And if you don't understand,
weird.
you'll think botany is sex. It's all... but what is got to be careful what message you give out.
In fact, the whole reason why we think all of this is so weird is because because we call it these weird things. If you just talk about it like normal, it's really not
So
awkward.
do you discuss body parts, for example? Do you actually discuss the process and, all that?
Yeah, we discuss that.
I'm scared to ask you. I'm just thinking aloud here in my head because of the conservative way we've been brought up.
Yeah. In fact, we're so relaxed in class and we say, hey, you know what? And within these four walls, you can ask us anything you want, and we'll answer it. And so even if a kid asks us the most ridiculous question that should, startle us or make us feel weird, we just really calmly answer it. And that really, that breaks all the tension in the room.
Okay, let me tell you my experience again. We had a thing called psychology of adjustment in college. Now, bear in mind, we were about 16, 17 at that point, if I remember correctly. So we and that was the first time they introduced some sort of sexuality conversation in class in this thing called psychology of adjustment. And so we sort of, or everybody knew, I guess. And then this lady started asking questions about sex telling us things about sex. And they said, do you have any questions? And one smart aleck put his hand up and said, can you show us what is masturbation? And the teacher was so angry. Now, I know he was being cheeky, but I was just thinking if she handled it with a little bit more, panache and held her own, it would have been really good. But the very fact that she got offended meant that she wasn't mature enough to teach the class. Now, he's going to be a jerk, but kids you're going to get all types.
Oh, yeah.
So how does one deal with that? Because you don't get these smart alex people trying to, put you in your place also?
Absolutely.
And
so at the very beginning, if you're very open with the information, you explain to them masturbation is self-pleasure. And some people choose to engage in this and some people don't. It's up to you. It's your choice. You make it something that's your choice.
Masturbation will save our country. It'll stop the population issue and stop all this molesting. I say we should make it a compulsory activity all over the world. In fact, let's take a break while I decide whether I should have a little time for a little play myself. I'll be back in a second. Nilima, don't go anywhere. You're the expert. I'm just here to learn.
Cyrus says, stop picking your nose. Listen to this ad. Made in India is India's first indie music podcast hosted by May Thomas. You can find it on indusvox.com or subscribe to it on your favorite podcasting app. And that's what Cyrus says.
All right, it's called Cyrus Says. Back with Nilima here. If you have questions on sexuality, I don't have time to answer them. Nilima, I want to get back to your life now because we've just fast-forwarded to what you're doing and we'll get back to it in detail again. But you grew up in the U.S. You went to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, very famous, where you majored in economics and Spanish.
Yes.
All right. So you're fluent in Spanish and you lived in 3 South American countries.
Yeah.
So tell us your path. How did you get here?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Michigan. My parents are immigrants from Maharashtra. And during college, I studied abroad in Mexico and in Chile, and I was just
where you met El Chapo for the first time and shared a cell with him and Sean Penn. Am I right? Be open, be candid.
But I fell in love with Latin America, and I was like, I want to become fluent in Spanish. It was such a random passion to have, especially because you grew up in this very like high achieving Indian American kind of thing. You should become a doctor.
Why did you win the spelling bee? I mean, that's the normal story.
And you start to realize that you should just follow your passion, whatever it is, because like Steve Jobs says, the dots connect looking backwards. You don't know right now why you're doing it, but if it makes you feel alive, you should do it. So I studied abroad a lot in Latin America. I did economics and Spanish. And after I graduated, I was working in Bolivia as a Kiva fellow. Basically, I was working with microfinance borrowers.
Wow.
And so I was documenting their stories.
And working in Spanish.
In Spanish. That's completely in Spanish.
See, this is the Indian thing. Let's stop for a second and digest it. Only we can go from our country and our language to another country with another language, learn a third language, and live in a fourth country, and then take over microfinance. That's a beautiful story. This makes my day. Yeah.
So I basically, through this experience, I realized that there's a sector out there that lies between business and NGO, which brings in the efficiency of business, but the social impact of the NGO world, which is social entrepreneurship.
But the aggression of being in the financial race and the finance markets and microfinance, etc., in a time when it was even more competitive, I'm presuming 5-7 years ago, isn't it odd to suddenly turn towards NGOs and saving the world and social justice and looking beyond? It's almost like a paradox.
So in India, it became very, for-profit, and it has that stigma around it. But initially, it was started as a way to pull
Really must be the racist comment, folks. In India, we only care about our money. Oh, damn. But in America, they're all like Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett.
It started in Bangladesh.
Oh, is it?
And originally, it was a way to help people pull themselves out of poverty. And so I was really fascinated by this space of, intelligent, passionate people working to solve the world's problems, but using powerful tools like business and economics, rather than just, raising money to build one well in one village.
Or one wall, as Donald Trump wants, which is totally different. Yeah.
And so people are asking, how can we solve these problems at scale, systemically? And I found that really exciting. So,
but just tell us, what is this Kiva Fellowship exactly? Is it some, like a Rhodes Scholarship or something big?
Yes, it's a pretty well-known organization in the U.S., and they connect lenders all around the world to microfinance borrowers in 100 different countries. So they send fellows out there to go into the field and see what's actually happening with the borrowers.
In India, that's called neighbors. You just, go to the neighbor, I need money. What the hell? I tell you, the Americans really complicate everything, which is so simple. A reverse racist moment from our side, 1-1, going to tiebreaker.
Yeah, and millions of dollars leveraged out of that, which is much more than you can get from your neighbor.
Well, you don't know my neighbors. I live in Mulba Hill. All right, let's move on. So then you're doing this, and you've got this passion, as you say, there's a philanthropic side to perhaps business in the West, as you say, and so you suddenly get a nose for this, right? Is there some moment that happened? Did you suddenly see a girl, or did you meet somebody, or some story that sort of gave you this effect, cathartic moment?
Well, so I think working in the field in Bolivia, all of the borrowers' stories were there's so much gratitude there. And they're like, I got this micro loan. I would have never been able to access a loan from a proper bank. And I was able to start this business, and it's really helped me, put my kid through school or help me make a better life for myself. Thank you to the people, to the lenders who put down that capital for us.
Okay.
And then when I uploaded these stories to the internet, the lenders from all over the world were like, thank you for sharing these stories. We wanted to know what the impact was. And people have this intrinsic need to connect, and being that connector was really cool. And so I realized I had to learn a lot more about this sector. So I became a research associate at the University of Michigan. I was writing MBA case studies on social enterprise.
This is such interesting after-dinner conversation, Nilima. Tell me more.
So I was writing teaching cases for faculty at the Ross Business School at the University of Michigan, and really understanding how these business models work. And actually, India is the hotbed for social enterprise globally. The most number of social ventures have come from India.
Is that so?
Yeah.
The whole country is a social enterprise in a sense now. No, so one sec, your roots are here, as in your parents left as adults from here?
Yeah.
But you yourself have not really come back up to this point?
No, just visiting relatives.
On the summer break and that kind of thing. So you've never worked here, you've never really been part of this thing. So why the shift suddenly? Why did you decide, what was that all about?
Well,
because you're a Spanish-speaking person in South America, why would you change again?
So, yeah, and I was in Michigan at this point writing case studies, and really the thing is, I think, and this is advice like anyone in their 20s going through their careers, when you feel like you're not growing anymore and you're not ignited and excited for life, move. Just go.
I haven't moved in 27 years. God, that's so embarrassing.
Or move positions.
You've changed 3 continents already and you're half my age. You've destroyed my self-esteem. Forget sexuality. I'll never be able to show myself naked again to anyone. Thanks to you. Yeah, but I think it's fantastic. These stories are very interesting that you let go of a microfinance world. You let go of the University of Michigan where you were doing quite well in researching and the comforts of being an American in America. And then you come here and you're dealing with a behemoth. You're dealing with a whole culture of people who are turning their backs on a topic. Let's face it, you're blowing into the wind here. It's not easy.
So when I originally came here, I realized I really had to understand social enterprise before I could really do anything of substance in this space. And so I wanted to be strategic about it. I didn't just want to start doing something and, have it peter out. So I was working, so I came as a Vilgro fellow. It's an incubator based in Chennai, and they work with social entrepreneurs from lots of different sectors. So I launched an accelerator program for them in Chennai for a mentorship program for social entrepreneurs. So that meant that I got to meet lots of social entrepreneurs and learn from them.
But at the moment, you're just a one-woman show, rather. There's nobody else with you. You've got no partners. You just go and you start your thing.
So fast forwarding, after a few years at Vilgro, I started Iesha, and I actually have hired a few people on my team. So.
No, but going back to Chennai, so you started working with social entrepreneurs.
So I was working at the incubator. I was an employee of Vilgro.
Oh, is that it? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then we fast forward a little bit and we come to the launch of Iesha, which is, what do we call it? Sexuality learning? Is that the right thing?
We call it sexuality and gender education.
Sexuality and gender education. Now, of course, you've got people under you and you've got, and it's in Karnataka at the moment, is it?
So we've done pilots in Mumbai, and we have our first client in Karnataka, and they're doing it at a tribal belt on the border of Karnataka.
So won't language be an issue? If you go pan-India, you'll need to get people who can speak to dialect of that area?
Yep, we've translated the course into Kannada.
Because how much can you point? I tried that. Now, children, today's discussion, a young man stand up, point.
Yeah.
That's quite embarrassing. Let's not go there. Okay, so Karnataka, and obviously there are plans to go all across the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, are you looking?
And across the income spectrum as well.
Yeah, this is what I want to ask you. Because I think we just pretend that upmarket society, what we call upmarket India or middle class and upper middle class India, is exempt from all this. But I do feel, and we just think it's always a tribal problem, a rural problem. Do you get that? Do you get that? And it's not that at all. Like I told you, nobody spoke to me.
Every single person in the world thinks it's somebody else. If you go to low income, they'll say it's a rural thing. If you go to rural, they'll say it's a, tribal thing. If you go to the US, they'll say it's an India thing. If you go,
Yeah.
And so literally the only way we
Only Bangladesh had nowhere to go. Abhi kaun hai? Yeah, damn it. Okay, it's our thing. I'm sorry, that's mean. I take that back immediately, yeah.
Yeah, so the only way we can really fix this is if we look inside and look in our own communities and look at the kinds of jokes we make with our friends. Look at the sort of media we consume.
Do you think we are chauvinists, the Indian males?
I think that everyone in the world is influenced by the messages that we get, and everyone is biased because of that. Every single women, men, children, everyone. And I think it's to varying degrees based on the influences that you've had growing up. But the only way we can truly break out of it is if we're aware of it and we deconstruct it.
Okay, so how do we handle this? We all know about the so-called Delhi mail, low-income Delhi mail, if you must. How do we break all these barriers and these myths sometimes and stereotypes also? How's it ever going to change? Because I've got an 8-year-old daughter, for example. There's no way I'm going to let her go out in Delhi in the night. I'd have to follow with a gun. I'd be scared.
Yeah, and people, we take the extreme examples and we hold them up as, this is what sexism looks like, when really it's there in our workplaces, it's there everywhere, right? But with these extremes or with anything, you have to meet them where they're at. So if we go to high-income kids, we'll speak their language, we'll reference things that they know, and we'll meet them at the point that they're at, right? And same if you go to low-income Delhi mail, as you say, as the paragon
I'm just giving you that example because it's out there with that whole rape story and what's happening.
Totally. So if you go to a community where, where people, there's just never been a conversation about women and men being equal ever, you have to start in a very different place than where we would start with someone.
See, it's very confusing. I'm again looking at our structure of society for a second, our strata rather, and that is, how do I know when I've crossed the line? If we do banter or whatever, double entendre here and there, how do I know? How do I know that this is offensive to someone, for example? Because what's offensive to X because of the connection between two people is not offensive to the other two.
That's a really good question, and I'm so glad that you're asking that question.
I'll ask it again.
Because that's the first step, is asking that question, is that how do I know if I'm being offensive? And the way to answer that is to listen and to respect what the other person is saying. So if you feel like someone is feeling uncomfortable or slightly offended and maybe even doesn't want to say it, be receptive to those feelings and then ask why, and deconstruct why, and understand that your perspective is not the same as someone else's who might feel like they're oppressed by these structures.
Are we not taking it a bit too far sometimes? Because where do we draw the line? We start now. I think a lot of people are getting scared in the workplace. Obviously, with friends, there are liberties you take because there's a certain relationship. But I'm saying in the workplace where the relationship is only this much, say 20%. Where do we draw the line? How do we know?
I think what happens is that we're forgetting about the human connection, right? It's not like someone says something and it's over and you're fired. It's like, it's a give and take. If someone says something, someone feels offended, they'll give a signal and then they'll have a hopefully they'll have a conversation about
staring? Okay, Indian men, we are starers. We stare. Staring is our thing. It's almost like in our DNA. Isn't that offensive, for example? If someone's just standing there and staring for a long period of time? But because a lot of people don't understand that staring is bad. I have been begging people to stop staring.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the point is not to make India into a different country. It's not to turn it into the US or into anything else.
No?
No, absolutely
Why not?
Absolutely not. Because, every country has its own
You've
problems.
got a McDonald's on every street.
It's to kind of operate within the context that you're at and appeal to people's humanity, make them incrementally see the light.
No, but I've got into fights with a lot of people growing up when they stare at you when you're walking on the road. Male staring at males. We just stare a lot, for example. We just don't know that we're violating proximity or somebody's personal space.
But the amazing thing is if you tell a guy, and, he's a good person at heart, you tell him that you're making this woman feel uncomfortable and scared, he'll understand that. And I think a big misconception is that boys will be boys and they can't learn anything. And that is a huge lie. Men are, they're sensitive, empathetic
You have
beings.
more faith in men than I do. This is a real paradox. But so am I staring too much? Is that what you're trying to say? Oh boy. And ABBA will file a suit against me. I know they've got lots of money. Alright, now let's talk about your personal life a little bit. A couple of interesting things that I wish we have time to get into. One is that you decided to buy a one-way ticket to Mumbai or Nairobi. Is this a true thing? And you just got up one day and said, I want to change the world. And why Nairobi? What is the connect there?
So like I said, I was writing case studies at the University of Michigan. I got to a point where I'm like, this is great learning about it, but I actually want to be in the field doing it. And two of the places that I knew that had a lot of social enterprise activity were India and Kenya. So I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to figure out what I want to do unless I'm there and talking to people. So why don't I book a one-way ticket and just go? And so I set a date for when I was going to resign from my job and leave. And luckily, in the meantime, I got the Vilgro Fellowship, so I didn't have to take such a risk.
So no Hakuna Matata. Instead, it was back here in Tujiachi. Don't use language like that. That's where it all starts. Let me tell you. Okay, let's talk about this nextbillion.net. What is that all about? A blog that you do?
So that was just a blog that I was involved with that that tracks the trends in social enterprise globally, and that was kind of the first way that I made connections all over the world in social enterprise. So when it was time for me to leave Michigan, I knew that I had friends in different countries doing the work I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to go there, hang out with them, learn, and figure out my next steps.
All right, we'll come back to Iesha as we end, but before that, can you for a minute just address the Indian males out there? And perhaps in a very nice way sort of tell us what we're doing wrong. Because if that's the right word, or where we should go with this whole sexuality thing. Because it's reached a point where we can't say it's the lower class and the upper class, it's all of us.
Yeah, I think the major thing with Indian guys, don't be so freaked out about everything, It's just relax.
So we overreact, is that it?
No, I think that there's a lot of anxiety around, your own sexuality, about how do I talk to girls, am I doing this right, I think that the major thing is to just remember that girls have as much anxiety and self-image issues as you do, and it's a two-way street. You're not out to get a girl or to pick up a girl. You just go connect with another human being and have a conversation, let it flow. Don't put so much anxiety and expectations on the result of it.
This is our Indianness, this result thing, natija as we call it. We have to get to that point. We need to stop that and go back to an Aryabhatta-like age, where it's all 1-0 going in one circular motion. I just confuse my listeners so that they lose interest in what we have to say. But no, it's very interesting, and what I like about you is you're very positive about all this. I would think if I was with Indian men all the time discussing sexuality, by now I'd be a killer. I would be shooting people. It would just be normal. I'd wake up and be, Chandu, come here, bang, dead. So I'm very impressed with the fact that you're laughing and smiling through it all, and you're actually enjoying this.
Well, see, the amazing thing is that when you stop looking at the problem and you start looking at the solution, it gets really exciting.
What is the solution?
Education, talking, discourse, breaking the taboo.
And this education across the board, to the parents, to the grandparents, to the elders, the youngsters, both genders, everybody.
Yeah, and I think people just need to start talking and start listening to each other.
Don't we need to also educate our elders on how to talk to the youngsters? Isn't that half the problem?
Yeah, you can do that.
So your work is less. Okay, I don't want to kill your market, you're right. Keep quiet. If you're old, don't talk. We'll handle it here at Iesha. Okay. Before we go, just a little bit about yourself. So what do you like to do? How do you enjoy India? Where do you stay now? You're in Mumbai?
Yeah, I've been in Bandra for 3 years. And
wow.
It's an amazing place. So many innovative people.
Poor man's Greenwich Village is what we call it.
Oh, definitely not poor man's. But, yeah, just so many creatives, so much art and music and entrepreneurship.
So what else do you do? What do you do with your time when you get away from this world of trying to sort of almost save our country's sexuality and just attitudes to get people to like each other more? What do you do?
Yeah, I love meeting all the different kinds of people that are here doing really interesting stuff. I sing, I do a little bit of music.
Sing?
Yeah.
Are you going to sing for us?
No.
Awkward pause. She says no. Do you write your own songs, that kind of singing?
A little bit. Just, it's just a hobby.
Okay. And what else? What other things are you interested in now beyond helping us with the sexuality issue, not just here but everywhere?
I like to travel. I actually haven't been traveling much recently with the startup, but I used to like to travel.
But you have a one-way ticket, so you can't go anywhere at the moment because you don't have a return. Is there going to be a return? Is there...
Okay, I've definitely left the country in the last 4 years several times.
Oh, you have? And you've gone home to Michigan? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, so what is home?
Michigan.
Really? So this is just temporary? Or you don't even know? You don't know?
It's a journey.
What if you fall in love with an Indian male?
Yeah, but people think everything is static, and people, it's like you don't know where you're going to be or who you're going to be with, and you can move with people as well. It's not like, it's not.
See, it's difficult for my middle class mentality to understand where you're coming from because nothing is permanent. You're anti the result. For us, it's all about the result. For you, it's the journey. It's hugely different. But before we let you go, you'll go back to Michigan, is it? You're going to go back to America? Is that the plan? Vaguely?
I just told you.
I'm not listening.
Journey.
I'm not listening. Yeah. You don't want to answer
that. Yeah, of course, eventually I'll go back and settle in the US if settling is a thing.
I'm asking you that because my next question is, so what do you prefer, America or India?
so many people ask me that.
But we all want to know because we want to know if we went there, would we be happy? I think that's what we want to know.
I think that once people start getting out of their country and start really living and experiencing other places, it's like you get what you need from a place at that phase in your life, right? And this is the place for me right now, and I find it very exciting. And at some point, it'll probably time for me to go back to where I came from and be in my own country. And
so, Nilima, you're truly a global citizen. We cannot put a brand on you or put a mark on you and say you're this or that. You are who you are. But before we end, one last question, and this is a slightly provocative one. Who's better, the Indian men or the American men? Who do you find are nicer people?
I don't classify guys by ethnicity.
Oh, come on. It's all about the look, yaar. Read the matrimonial columns. We're a shallow society. So come on. If you had to get married, would it be an American, an Indian? Please don't tell me a Desi American because that's the worst.
And also, Cyrus, why did you only choose Indians and Americans? What about different
Our podcast
African
will never
countries,
end. There are 188
Asian
countries. There are 204 countries from what I gather. But I'm not counting ISIS territories as well. So 180 odd countries, all right?
So racist.
It's going to take us a long time to get through them. All right, so tell me about Portugal.
So I think I'll go with some random country.
A neutral country, go for Switzerland.
Yes, Switzerland.
Let me tell you, the cows are more interesting. I've been there. I'm just kidding. Lovely people. All right, Nilima, thank you so much. You're doing a wonderful job. I think your heart is in the right place, and so is your career. All the best to you, and let's hope that one day our country will both the sexes will get along.
Thank you,
on
Cyrus.
equal terms.
Cyrus Says, ask me anything. If you want Cyrus to answer your questions on air, send an email to whatcyrussays@gmail.com. If you send us a link to a sound file on SoundCloud, we'll even play you asking the question in your own voice. And that's what Cyrus says.
On the AMA right now, we have Nilima, of course, and since sexuality is the need of the hour, in a sense, please don't start writing into us asking where. No, it's not that kind of show. It's about educating people in sexuality. And Amit, you've got questions about sexuality that you want to, as a 42-year-old Indian male, you want to ask.
No, I think I'm okay.
I think
I'm set with the question part of it.
You've studied enough in your lifetime?
I think I would have
You've researched every damn magazine you could?
Every magazine, every video.
Stop it! He's spoiling the entire show by being an objectificator. That's a new word, by the way. Nilima, are you ready? These are questions we have no idea about.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So this is from Tejas Chavan. Great podcast. I think yours is the only podcast in India which manages... This seems like more of a fan mail than like a question, but hey, let me go through it.
They're saying nice things. You can read it out slowly.
I guess, yeah. All right. I think yours is the only podcast in India which managed to cover such great breadth and depth in topics while keeping it entertaining, so kudos. I also like it that it lasts more than half an hour and that you manage to upload episodes every week without fail. Have you considered going into video mode similar to many other podcasts?
Rajesh, is it?
Tejas.
Tejas, have you seen me? The visual medium will be a challenge. We're happy with the audio. Although, I hope this is not crossing the line in sexuality and terms and sexism and all that. But today we have Nilima, so it would be... visual content would have been better than normal.
Thank you.
That's okay? This is the future, Nilima. This is the future. My son...
let go of your anxiety, Cyrus.
No, I'm telling you, I looked at this worksheet in the studio where we shoot our TV show. And it's an American company. And we're going through everything and the sexism, the things, the do's and don'ts is a lot.
Oh man!
Including including maintaining eye contact. Now, how the hell do you define when you're crossing that?
How are they telling you that on the TV show?
Without using the word stay, do not. There's a thing that there's a whole HR has a whole list.
But that's not what you're doing on air, right? That's just general
the employees were showing it to us. So we are freelancers, so it doesn't apply to us. Okay. So we can wink at girls, but don't do that. That's bad.
Yeah, see, checklists are the worst way to teach people how to interact with human beings.
It's not. You can't quantify it exactly, and everything is different.
Yeah, there's
relative.
no one answer to anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like this guy is an interpersonal relationship, right? How do you have a single answer to that?
Yeah.
It can be, it depends on what your relationship with that person is.
Correct.
There are certain people you can talk to in any way you want to, in ways that would be very, very offensive.
But you shouldn't come naked to the town hall. There are a couple of things that are very clear.
I'd say, I think that's a pretty clear red line.
Yeah.
That's not one that should be crossed. Okay, so this next one is from Bhavin Shah. Congratulations on 50 episodes. I've been listening to your podcast since the 3rd episode and liking the way it's going.
Hated the first 2, but who cares?
But you know what? I don't blame them. The first 2 episodes did kind of suck.
Really bad?
We had five people in the studio. And
Did we?
Yeah, we were trying to do like the whole panel discussion kind of thing.
We were poor man's Arnob.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we can't hear him, so
So I mean, 3rd episode is a good place to start.
Nilima's not contributing. She's sitting there bored.
Okay, let me try and see. What do you think? Is there any dignity left in media since they've become so insensitive? Don't you think it should change? Don't you think people should stop believing what is being shown and wrote about different issues? What can be done? People are thinking and believing something which is far from reality.
No, he's right. Honestly, I got to tell you, since we work with the news media a lot and all that, it's become I don't know, in America it's probably the same. After a point, it's about the ratings and getting people to watch. The insensitivity, like during 26/11, being asked to go and interview celebrities and things like that. The whole idea is what will work. They don't even divorce themselves from what's happening.
Reality of that situation.
So I don't know what to say, but I think it's symptomatic of the country. This whole middle class India is very aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's the way. Am I right? Why don't you take this? Because you're more neutral. See, we start becoming cynical, and then our whole thing becomes,
I think because it's a rat race, people have to be very aggressive, and people don't listen to each other's opinions. It's like my opinion, and then like broadcasting it as widely as I can. And I think just there needs to be a space for people to learn to be more unbiased and have like a calm dialogue and discourse and come to common conclusions.
I agree with that, but I don't think calmness is something that's built into like Indian nature, right? I mean, like everything is at like a crazy pitch.
Have you watched a wedding or a cricket match? Oh, come on.
All calmness all the time, right?
There aren't 4 Brits clapping slowly. Well played, old chap. My foot.
It is. I mean, like Indians are very, we're very kind of...
No, but even the news, I think her ideas about the news being a certain social responsibility, which is what Nilima is all about, It's a little different from just manufacturing a product. And having said that, it's just the same thing.
So, I mean, like, if you ever listen to a news article which you actually know a lot of stuff about, you then realize at that point just how bad media probably is.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean,
but why doesn't the media synthesize that information for us so we can understand what we're reading in a more nuanced way?
It also depends on who's getting into this profession.
Yeah. Well,
it all boils down to that.
That happens
It's
too.
failed actors. And failed actors, Nilima, let me tell you, beta, let me tell you what. We are a group of people who have no brand. It's a sad but true story.
Yeah. True, I guess. Cool. That's all we got.
But that's why we don't understand why you left Michigan. And just please.
I mean, we have the same problems with our media.
Well, yeah, the U.S. media is not much better, right? I mean, there's the same thing over there. If you start looking at stuff...
Have you ever had a picnic at Lake Michigan with hot dogs in a basket and red wine?
Also, have you seen who is running for president of the U.S. right now?
Yeah, but he's not good. He's not going to win. He's not going to win.
Dude, I don't know. We've been saying he's not going to win.
20% odd Hispanic voters, colored voters, Asian voters.
He's not going to win the general, but he might be the Republican.
He will win the Republican.
I mean, like, it's been going on. I mean, like, it's crazy. I mean, like, it's insane.
Let's ask the Michigan voter. Are you?
I don't think they'll push it through. That would be it'd be like a joke.
But listen, Indians are traditionally Republicans, am I right? And then suddenly you've got this guy.
Yeah, Indians are not traditionally Republicans.
We're always more supportive. We're the only ethnicity which is Republican.
No, we're not.
There is a certain segment of Indians that are Republican.
Nikki, whatever her surname is, they're Indian origin people.
No, but that's because they're black light, right? I mean, like, it's easier for an Indian person.
That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, like, for a white person to, for a Republican to vote for an Indian.
But from George Bush Senior's days, the Republican agenda is better suited to India in terms of letting people come to the country, study in the country for the brain drain or reverse brain drain.
When you look at, if you look at polls which are done of Indian American populations and where they vote, it's overwhelmingly Democratic.
I think there's a divide between the Indian immigrants and their children, because I think it may be a case where the Indian immigrants may be more Republican and their children may lean more liberal.
Obama did like 84% in the Indian community, so I mean, like, it's not even like close. I mean, there's a vocal segment of Republican Indians.
I have one problem with this whole thing, and this is the whole idea of egalitarian America, is that the entire television and the entire film, and let's forget who's right and wrong, the entire lobby of creative arts is democratic and leftist. That's why Sean Penn goes and interviews El Chapo in a village somewhere in Mexico, or forest somewhere in Mexico. And I'm saying, well, what about Balanced View then? Okay, now we have Donald Trump, and so it's pretty black and white. But if you didn't, for example, why are they always, even someone like our Tonight Show host,
it's pretty clear that
it's like an agenda.
So
much for egalitarian.
But it's not an entertainment agenda. It has more to do with urbanization, right? I mean, like urban
but Jon Stewart shouldn't be going out of his. This year, but let's look at 2 elections back.
Creativity is generally flowing from urban centers, right? I mean, like that's just the nature of how creativity works, right? I mean, like it generally works. It comes out from urban centers, and urban populations are overwhelmingly democratic.
You think that's it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, like you look at the population of New York, Los Angeles.
He's also American return, Nilima. You'll get the accent, but it goes in and out.
And that's why I know as much about this stuff as I do. I know more about this stuff.
Would you like to take a ticket and go back to Michigan?
Not Michigan. I'd go to Philly.
So, Nilima, thank you so much for being on the show, and we've learned a lot today. I've learned that I have to ask permission before I make any dirty jokes again.
That is not true.
That's the sense I get. I got to check. Isn't that right?
No.
Just take a chance?
I said just flow. Just
flow. And when I'm in lockup in Delhi with 10 very large men who keep me as their plaything, you will visit.
I'll pay your bill. Don't worry.
Oh, so sweet. But thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're listening to Cyrus Says.
All views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Indus Vox Media Network or any of our show advertisers or sponsors. No animals were harmed in the making of this podcast, obviously.
All right, Cyrus Says is wrapping up, but we have Geek Fruit, which we want you to check out, hosted by Uber Geeks Tejas Menon and Jishnu Guha. They're like Simon and Garfunkel, except they're Tejas and Jishnu, and they can't sing. No, they can actually. And they talk about geek culture. If you're a geek or want to know about geeks or live with a geek or just next to Turkey is geek, go ahead, my friends. Listen to Geek Fruit. Check it out on ivmpodcast.com.